The latest. Thank you for your love and support. I appreciate you all. Africa is the only continent that we believe that we have nothing. We haven't finished solving our problems. Our economies are not doing good. And for that matter, we always need other people to come into the continent to help us solve our problems, because without other people, the developed countries, we cannot survive. But there is a deeper secret about these people. They always make sure they don't tell the world what they are going through, presenting themselves as if they have everything and they are done with their problems. According to one analyst, the United States of America is badly in need of oil resources from other places in order to survive. If they don't get it, the United States of America economy is going to stop working. It wouldn't be in recession. It will automatically stop working. And that is the reason to which they are forced to make a deal with Venezuela, because this is a nation that they came out some years back and claimed that they don't recognize Nicolas Maduro as the legitimate president. But we heard recently that Donald Trump decided to make a deal with Venezuela, and the deal didn't succeed. And we've seen that they are trying to also win China, and China is also the biggest enemy of the United States of America. But the US is trying to build relationships and make deals with China and Venezuela. And this is another reason to which they are doing everything possible to find a reason in Nigeria to invade. The more we are busy fighting in Nigeria, the more the oil will be leaving in order to keep the United States of America economy moving.
There's a very old saying in geopolitics: you can be an empire or you can be a debtor, but you cannot be both. For 80 years, the United States defied this rule. They printed the money and the world accepted it. They sanctioned their enemies and the world obeyed. They were the masters of the universe, but this week, the master had to go begging. In Caracas, the United States is doing the unthinkable. After years of trying to destroy Nicolas Maduro, after seizing his planes, freezing his accounts, and putting a $15 million bounty on his head, Washington is suddenly desperate to make a deal. Why? Because the petrodollar is dying, and they need Venezuela's oil to save it. And in Washington, the new Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, is facing a nightmare. He needs to borrow $3 trillion this year just to keep the lights on, but his usual customers aren't buying. So he is forced to look across the ocean to the very country the US calls its greatest enemy, China. Do you see the irony? The United States is currently waging an economic war against the two countries that it needs the most. I worked at the IMF for many years. I have seen this pattern before. When a superpower starts begging its enemies for resources, it is not a 4D chess move. It is a liquidation sale. Today we are going to look at the two desperate deals happening behind closed doors: the oil deal in Venezuela and the debt deal with China. Because if either of these deals fails, the American economy does not just recession, it stops. Let us start with the humiliation in Caracas. If you want to understand how weak the American empire has become, you do not need to look at the GDP numbers. You just need to look at who they are shaking hands with. 5 years ago, the United States declared that Nicolas Maduro was not the president of Venezuela. They recognized a man named Juan Guaido. They froze Venezuela's bank accounts. They seized their airplanes. They even put a $15 million bounty on Maduro's head like he was a cowboy outlaw in a Western movie. The goal was simple: collapse the Venezuelan economy, force a regime change, and take control of the world's largest oil reserves. So, what happened? Maduro is still there, but the American oil strategy is dead. You see, the United States made a catastrophic miscalculation. They assumed that if they sanctioned Venezuelan oil, the world would stop buying it. But the world is hungry. China continued to buy. India continued to buy. And here's the detail that keeps the US Treasury awake at night. They did not pay in dollars. Venezuela became the first laboratory for a post-dollar oil market. They started selling their oil for Chinese yuan and increasingly for USDT crypto. By sanctioning them, the US forced Venezuela to build a financial immune system. They proved to the world that you can sell oil without Washington's permission. And now the tables have turned. While the US has plenty of oil in Texas, it is the wrong kind of oil. It is light sweet crude. But the massive American refineries in the Gulf Coast, they were built 50 years ago to process heavy sour crude. Without that heavy oil, the refineries choke. They cannot produce enough diesel. And if diesel runs out, the American supply chain stops. So we see the unthinkable. American diplomats are quietly going back to Caracas. They are issuing waivers to companies like Chevron to pump oil in Venezuela again. They are offering debt relief. They are essentially begging the man they tried to overthrow to please turn the pumps back on. This is not diplomacy, this is surrender. It proves that when push comes to shove, the United States needs the Global South's resources more than the Global South needs the United States' permission. But if the situation in Venezuela is embarrassing, the situation in Washington is absolutely terrifying. While the diplomats are begging for oil, the Treasury is begging for cash. This is where the new Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, finds himself in a trap. The American public thinks the Treasury Secretary's job is to manage the economy. It is not. His job is to be a salesman. Every single year, the US government spends trillions more than it taxes. To fill that giant hole, they have to sell paper, US Treasury bonds. For decades, this was the easiest job in the world. The entire planet lined up to buy American debt because it was considered risk-free. But this year, the math has broken. The United States needs to sell $3 trillion in new debt just to survive the next 12 months. And the question Mr. Bessent has to answer is, who is going to buy it? He looks at Japan, traditionally the biggest buyer. But Japan is in a currency crisis. They are not buying American debt. They are selling it to save their own yen. He looks at Europe. They are stagnant, fighting their own recession. He looks at the American banks. They are already stuffed full of government paper, sitting on unrealized losses. There is only one buyer left on the planet with deep enough pockets to bail out the United States, China. And this is the absolute comedy of the American position. On one hand, you have the politicians screaming about a trade war. You have threats of 60% tariffs. You have generals talking about conflict in the Pacific. But quietly behind closed doors, the Treasury Secretary has to pick up the red phone and call Beijing. He has to say, please do not sell our bonds. In fact, please buy more. Because if China decides to stop buying, or worse, if they decide to liquidate the hundreds of billions of dollars of US debt they already hold, the American system breaks. Interest rates in the US would explode overnight. Mortgage rates would hit 10, 12, 15%. The stock market, which is addicted to cheap money, would collapse. The United States is currently trying to hold a gun to China's head, while China is holding the deed to the United States House. Mr. Bessent knows this. He is a hedge fund manager. He understands leverage. He knows that you cannot declare war on your own banker. So while the news channels talk about how tough the US is being on China, the reality is the opposite. The US is trapped. They need China to fund their deficit, and China knows it. They are watching Mr. Bessent sweat. They know that without their money, the American dream cannot pay its monthly mortgage. When you put these two stories together, Venezuela and China, you see the full picture of the collapse. For 50 years, the American superpower rested on two pillars. Pillar number one was the petrodollar. The deal was, we protect you and you price oil in dollars. That forced every country to hold dollars to buy energy. Venezuela has just proven that you can break that pillar and survive. Pillar number two was the hot treasury bond. The deal was, you give us your savings and we give you a safe return. China is now proving that the return is not safe, and the savings are being weaponized. We are witnessing the end of what the French finance minister Valéry Giscard d'Estaing called the exorbitant privilege. For 80 years, the United States had a magic trick. They could print green paper, and the rest of the world would give them real things in exchange. They printed paper, and Saudi Arabia gave them oil. They printed paper, and China gave them electronics. They printed paper, and Brazil gave them coffee. It was the greatest economic deal in history, but the deal relied on trust. Trust that the dollar was neutral. Trust that the dollar was safe. In 2022, when the US froze Russian reserves, they broke that trust. They told the world, the dollar is not a currency, it is a political leash. And now the consequences are arriving. While Washington runs around trying to put out these fires, The BRICS nations are simply building a new plumbing system. We are seeing a massive shift to the bilateral trade. Brazil is selling food to China in yuan. India is buying oil from Russia in rupees. We are settling our trades without touching the US banking system. The R5 project, real, ruble, rupee, renminbi, rand, is moving from a theory to a necessity. We are not trying to destroy the dollar. The United States is doing a fine job of that by itself. We are simply building a lifeboat. The United States is entering a new phase. I call it the imperial liquidation.
A lot of us don't understand the games of these people, and that is why we've seen that we are all calling for these people to come into Nigeria to set the Christians free, because they believe that when it comes to religion, Africans, we can divide ourselves and go to any length to back religion. When they wanted to invade Venezuela, they called Nicolas Maduro all sorts of names. And it seems like in this world, they are the only ones that have good leaders, that know who is a leader and who deserves to rule which people. We saw the same attacks when Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso kicked them out. We saw what the United States Congress were talking about. Some were claiming that if it were to be Trump, this thing that happened, Niger, this small country, wouldn't have happened, kicking US troops out. So now we need to understand that whatever war they claim they want to wage in Nigeria is not to help you and I. It is an economic war that they need to wage in order to have access to the resources so they can survive. That the United States of America is not what is presenting itself to us. It's not what we have read. It's not what we know. We believe what they say, but we don't know that these people will never actually come out to tell us what exactly is happening in the United States of America. It's not like Africa that they always try to paint us black to the world. So we believe that we have nothing, and this is how they want us to be. So that when they are coming into the country in the guise of trying to help us, we wouldn't know. So anytime we see these people going to places in the name of helping them, that it is for their own agenda. Like I always ask, what work did we do for any of these countries? The Africans, we think that they can just give us their resources, their money, and their everything for free. There is no free lunch anywhere in this world. And we need to wake up as Africans. We need to accept that there is nobody that can come into the continent to set us free if we don't set ourselves free. We need to start working. We need to start solving our own problems, because the people that are presenting themselves as if they have finished solving their own issues have issues. Look at France, for instance. We know what is happening to the French economy, yet the President Emmanuel Macron is still presenting himself as if there is nothing that is happening, and trying to have access to Africa in order to continue to be taking the resources. And that is why Africans, we are calling for unity and good leadership, because all these leaders in the democratic elected are all puppets that are not serving the interests of the African, but rather helping other people to survive. We need to wake up. We need to rise up. We need to unite, because it is only in our unity that we, the Africans, can fight for our survival. Like Nicolas Maduro is doing, rising to fight for the people in Venezuela. And he made it clear to Donald Trump that they are not ready to have any slave peace deal with them, because Trump is trying to claim they want Venezuelan president to live alive with his family so they can bring somebody that they can have access to the oil. And he is bent on fighting to set his country free, to defend the oil, and to make sure that the oil benefits the people in Venezuela. So anytime these people come out with excuses to target a nation, it's not them that we need to listen to. We have to listen to the nation that they are trying to invade, because anytime they are doing this, they are doing it for an interest, to always make sure they get what they want in that country. It's when they don't get it, that's when they try to come with something for us to rise up against that leader. United we stand, divided we fall, and united we keep standing forever and ever. The greatest enemy of the African is mental slavery. So let's decolonize ourselves from mental slavery. Let's keep sharing to educate our brothers and sisters. Together we make Africa great for ourselves and the next generations that are going to come. So that's the latest around the world and in the United States of America.